Hey everyone, my name is Ben Chaish, and today we are going to be comparing Fujifilm's rangefinder-esque cameras that are in their current lineup now that the X-E4 was announced. We also have the X-Pro3 as well as the X100V. So I'm gonna go over the use cases for each, kind of the pros and cons, and talk about kind of which one suits each purpose. So right off the bat, I want to give two thank yous. First of all is to Moment for providing the X-E4 for review and comparison. No one's paying me to make this video or anything like that. And then as well for my friend Tyler Trudeau, whose work I'll link in the description. This is his X-Pro3, which he graciously loaned to me to do these reviews. So as someone that shoots primarily with Leica cameras, obviously, you can kind of see if, I'm someone that photographs with Leicas, kind of the general draw and appeal. A lot of people call the Fujifilm a poor man's Leica. I wouldn't necessarily say that. They definitely have similar design styling and all that stuff, but they are very, very different machines that can still be used for similar purposes. So I'll try not to bore people with specs too much, but for the most part, they actually do have very similar specs. Right off the bat, none of them actually have in-body image stabilization. They all have the same or similar 26 megapixel sensor. They're all APS-C, so they are that crop sensor. The Fujifilm X-Pro3 and the X-E4 are obviously interchangeable lens cameras, so any XF lens that Fuji makes you can toss on there, while the X100V has separate lens converters, but they technically aren't interchangeable with the regular XF lenses. They actually all have really good video specs as well, although again, none of them have in-body image stabilization. They can all shoot 4K in F-Log as well as like the Eterna profile and stuff like that. So as something that may be on more of a tripod or something like that, they all have very good video specs. So right off the bat, we will talk about the thing that at least is the first thing that I consider anytime I pretty much buy anything, and that is the price. The X-E4 is the most inexpensive camera of the bunch. It comes in body only at $849. The X-Pro3 is the most expensive camera of the bunch that comes in at, I believe, $1799 for the black version. And then the X100V is kind of that like mid-range where you're getting something a little bit more as well. And you'll really see kind of as we go, it's kind of the mid-range in terms of features as well. And this camera comes in at $1399. Now, while we just kind of landed on the X100V, we might as well talk about this as the kind of like unique one of the bunch for sure. As you can see, it comes with a not interchangeable lens that is built into the body and everything. It is very, very compact. It is basically pocketable in a larger jacket pocket. Works great as just like a general walk-around camera combo. And the 35 millimeter equivalent focal length, which is what this is for, I think most people, kind of like the best all-around focal length where you get some more kind of like depth of field if you want to when shooting the lens wide open, but the 35 millimeter is still wide enough that it captures a full scene. And yes, I took a long time to thread that lens hood back on. It also has a redesigned lens, which is amazing, and we'll talk about kind of the differences there as well. But as a camera, it kind of has a lot of the other features that the X-Pro3 has, and definitely some more that the X-E4 doesn't have. So in saying that, the X-Pro3 and the X100V share some definite features here. You both get the optical viewfinder as well as the electronic viewfinder. For me, that is like a welcome addition. I like shooting with it, but for some people, that is just a gimmick. And as silly as it sounds, I think it looks good on the front of the camera, where the X-E4 doesn't. And so actually, when I had the camera under embargo, I put a piece of tape over it in that spot where the viewfinder is here. And I honestly think I might put the tape back because I just liked how it looked in that spot because it reminded me more of these old cameras. The other things that are amazing is these cameras share a really similar larger viewfinder. I don't know if the, specs exactly are the same, but if you look at kind of the difference between the three, and I'll make sure that we kind of zoom in here, the X100V and the X-Pro3 have a much larger viewfinder in that way. And then the X-E4 has a much smaller viewfinder. It's definitely not unusable or anything like that. But if you've used one of the two and then use the X-E4, you really notice it. But if you don't, really use it, I found that even with glasses, it wasn't really an issue for me. But, the other two are definitely an upgrade in that way. While we are kind of just similarly talking about other specs and things like that, we might as well talk about the kind of top plates and the options you get there. You can see that they all have like the kind of more manual style dials and less kind of those, I don't know, just customizable buttons everywhere. So you'll see that the buttons or the dials for shutter speed are a little bit larger on the X-Pro3 and the X100V, while this is a little bit smaller. And the X-Pro3 as well as the X100V both have the ISO built in to that same dial. The X100V actually has a bit of an upgrade because, as you see, I can open this up, turn it, and it'll stay up until I push it back down. And while the X-Pro3, when you pull it up, it kind of sucks back in, and so you have to hold it up yourself. And if you need to go a little bit, you kind of need to keep picking it up, putting it down, picking it up, putting it down. So the X100V definitely was an upgrade in that regard. And on the X-E4, you just don't have that option. So you have to use your custom button here to set that for ISO, which is what it comes kind of like pre-installed as. And for me, that's not an issue. It works great for that. So having kind of your exposure triangle right here works really well. So moving through with that kind of same, we'll talk about like button design and layout and everything. The three cameras, again, and I feel like it's going to be like this in a lot of ways, are kind of just like this like little ecosystem of very similar but different kind of things. So the back screens articulate on both the X-E4 as well as the X100V, while the X-Pro3 has the very polarizing fold down LCD screen, which, looks really cool and everything like that, but in practice is a little bit funky. But then you'll see that none of them actually have a D-pad that a lot of people were upset about, but they all focus basically on this little joystick, which I really, really enjoy. I love how the kind of like feel of the X-Pro3 and the X100V, the button layout is really similar. They have all the same stuff in relatively the same places. The Q button is right here, and then you have drive AF, then you have the same menu, play, display buttons. So there's just something about like moving from one camera to another and having the same feel that is really important. So if you're gonna own a couple of these, that might be something to think about or look into, as I've shot these two cameras together at the same time, the X100V and the X-E4, and it gets a little bit annoying to have to remember that the play button on the X100V is down here, the play button's up here for the other one. So there's just a few things in those kind of instances where you have to, kind of like remember two different muscle memories, which is a little bit of a bummer. Moving kind of like to the front side, we'll kind of try to flip all these over as well. You'll see a few things that are different and again, a few things that are the same. Obviously, you're not going to have an interchangeable lens mount on the X100V, so there's no lens button for that. And then there is no hybrid viewfinder on the X-E4, so you're not going to have the little hybrid viewfinder switch here. What you will see is like a little focus assist kind of light there. And then the X100V is the only one that has a built-in flash. But you also get, this front kind of control dial on all of the cameras, which is great. And then a very polarizing thing, as I've already been seeing in the comments of my X-E4 video, is the fact that they have decided not to include an AF select mode kind of dial or switch. So the X100V has the ability to change from manual to continuous to single shot autofocus on the side, which is very fine and great. The X-Pro3 has it on the front right here. And then what you have to do with the X-E4, if you're someone that kind of like switches back and forth between different things, is you're just gonna have to use one of the custom buttons on there to set that up, and then you have to scroll through a menu a little bit. So it's, again, something that is customizable and you can do, but you do have to give up one of your other buttons to do that. You'll also see, and again, polarizing actually for some reason, I didn't think it would be, that the X-E4 is super flat. There is just like no grip on here at all. In terms of ergonomics of grips and everything like that, the Fujifilm X-Pro3 is obviously much bigger, but it definitely has the most ergonomic style of grips. You have this huge piece right here, as well as this little bump that comes out right there. So fitting in the hand, it feels very, very good in that way. The X100V has this slight little bump, as well as a slight bump here. So it's kind of like a nice little design, while the X-E4 has just nothing and is very, very simple. So if you are someone that's going to throw like a giant zoom on here, or you know, just any incredibly large lens, that's probably going to be an issue, and you're probably going to want to have that hand grip. But I will say, for the kind of you know, f2 Fujicron lenses, as they are known to some, this balance is totally fine, especially with the thumb grip. And I mean, for the weight and everything like that, I haven't found it to be an issue, especially if I'm someone that, you know, uses it with a strap. So the X-Pro3 is obviously a lot larger than the other cameras. It is the largest of the bunch, and then it goes to the X100V, and then actually the X-E4 if you don't include lenses. So I didn't actually realize both how close they are in size and also how different they are. It was weird kind of seeing the difference, that they are really similar in size, but the X-Pro3 definitely feels more substantial, and it definitely feels easy as a travel camera, but it doesn't just feel as like grab and go. In the same way, it feels like you're picking up more of a tool than just a personal camera, which it sort of is, again, at like more than double the price of the X-E4. So the thing that I'm sure a lot of people will be considering, and something I'll definitely cover in a direct comparison video, is going to be, should I buy the X-E4 or the X100V if you are a 23mm shooter in particular? So just to do a quick comparison, and again, I will cover this more directly on another video, but here is kind of the size difference. So you're definitely going to get a larger, you know, protrusion out the front with the 23mm, and this is with a lens hood on as well on the X100V. So if that's something that's going to be an issue for you, the X100V is obviously going to be a little bit better. But if you do want that kind of like interchangeable option, it's definitely going to be more inexpensive. You know, even just buying this kit, the X-E4 with the 23mm lens is going to come in at a cheaper price point than the X100V. So if you're planning on expanding your kit in any way, I would definitely say that the X-E4 would most likely be the way to go in this kind of setup. Now, again, as another quick comparison, I will take the lenses off real quick of the cameras that can have interchangeable lenses, so we can kind of compare body-only sizes. And I'll also take this lens hood off real quick, so we get a more kind of packable comparison. You can see actually that the X100V is larger than the X-E4. It's not a ton, but you can definitely see right here, or if I can flip this over and we can show it direct to the overhead cam. The straps are all mixed up, but you can see here, if I try to line up the sides directly, it's not a huge difference. Obviously, it's a very, very small difference, but is it a difference nonetheless, and something to kind of look out for. The nice thing is, especially if you're looking for maybe like a backup body for another Fujifilm system, or maybe you're someone that owns an X-T4 or an X-Pro3 or just any of the other Fuji cameras, and you want another body to use sometimes with another lens or a B cam, this can fit just about anywhere. and is just an amazing little thing. I will check real quick, and yeah, it's actually smaller than my iPhone 11 Pro. So yeah, overall, it is the same width as an iPhone and is actually shorter this way. Obviously, it's thicker, but just for reference, it is, obviously a very, very tiny body. In terms of actual shooting experience and autofocus performance, I have found that for the most part, they're all pretty much in line. The sensors pretty much in line. So it's more coming down to the exterior features in terms of like, do you need interchangeable lenses? So if you do, don't buy the X100V. Do you want the smallest possible package? If you do, buy the X100V. If you are only going to shoot 35mm equivalent, or 23 in this case, X100V. If you were looking to get the majority of the performance at the cheapest price point, X-E4. But if you're going to use this in a professional sense, the biggest thing in my book that the X-Pro3 has, outside of weather sealing, that I will add that the X-Pro3 and the X100V can be weather sealed, where I do not believe the X-E4 has that capability. The X-Pro3 has the ability to shoot on dual card slots. So if you were shooting any kind of event work or anything that can't happen again, and if you lose something, you're going to be in big trouble, I would definitely say it's worth the upgrade simply for that feature alone to use the X-Pro3. If I had that option, I will take that any day of the week. Otherwise, ergonomically, they're mostly similar. The shooting experience on the X-Pro3 and the X100V, both a little bit better. They have some of the same kind of like cooler features in terms of, the button layouts and extra features in that way. They both have the bigger viewfinder, but they, in all aspects that really, really matter to photography, all sort of perform in a very, very similar sense. One more thing I will add that I forgot to mention is the X100V actually has a leaf shutter and a built-in ND filter. So if you want to, photograph in bright lights, they also added it today. As I'm filming this, they announced a firmware update to be able to add the ND for video, which is going to be amazing. But the leaf shutter has less movement because it's within the lens, and then it also allows you to flash sync all the way up to the basically full amount. So if you are looking to do some flash work or whatever and want to use high-speed sync on stuff that might not have high-speed sync or whatever, the X100V can do that for you in amazing ways. So thanks so much for watching. Hopefully this was helpful. I'll do a couple more kind of direct comparison videos. And then if you have any questions about those, drop them in the comments below. I'll try to answer as many as possible. And then if you have made it this far, please subscribe and maybe toss in the lightning emoji or something in so that I know that at least someone watched this all the way to the end. So thanks so much again, and I will see you on the next one.